The arrogant CEO of Lion married the waitress because of a cruel bet. The champagne glass slipped from Damien's hands. It fell in slow motion, rolling through the air of the luxurious ballroom, past the crystal chandeliers, past the shocked faces of the city's elite. Lion shapeshifters, wolf alphas, eagle magnates, all frozen in their designer suits. The glass shattered on the marble floor with a sound that seemed to echo forever. But Damien didn't hear it. His golden eyes were fixed on the delicate wrist of the woman beside him, the woman he had just married as a joke, as a bet, in the cruelest game he had ever played. The lotus flower mark burned there like a mark of condemnation. His blood ran cold. The ancient symbol, light pink petals arranged in perfect symmetry, was unmistakable to anyone familiar with the ancestral stories, but they were just myths, weren't they? Legends whispered by grandfathers in dusty libraries, tales of the first ones, the human lineage the founders swore to protect with their lives, the lineage lost in time. But he was not lost. She stood right beside him, dressed in a simple white dress, watching him with those shrewd grey eyes that had tormented him for weeks, eyes that held secrets deeper than he had ever imagined. Damien. His godfather, Marcus, a silver-maned wolf with more money than morals, stepped forward, concern etched on his aristocratic face. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Yes, he had. He had seen the ghost of every sin he had committed, of every human being he had crushed beneath his Ferragamo loafers in his rise to power, of every family he had destroyed for profit. And now that ghost had a name. Ilara. But to understand how a waitress managed to make a lion kneel, we need to go back to the day this perverse game began. 6 months before, the bet, "I'll do it for $1 million." Damien Sterling, CEO of Sterling Industries and the most powerful shape-shifting lion in New Seattle, leaned back in his leather armchair at the Apex Club, the exclusive establishment accessible only to the city's animal elite. His 3 closest friends, Marcus the Wolf, Raphael the Eagle, and Victor the Panther, were seated at a reserved table, surrounded by imported whiskey and the thick aroma of cigar smoke. "You're crazy," said Raphael, his angular face contorted in amusement. "Marry a human for 6 months. Do you have any idea how undignified that is for you?" "That's exactly the point." Damien's voice was smooth as a fine, aged bourbon, overflowing with the arrogance that had made him both feared and admired. At 32, he had built an empire with his family's already considerable fortune, crushing anyone who stood in his way, human or otherwise. "I'm going to prove that humans are nothing more than pets for entertainment. I'm going to marry one, pretend to live with her for 6 months, and come out richer and more justified." "Which human?" asked Victor, his green eyes gleaming with mischievous curiosity. Damien pointed to the club window, which overlooked the street below. "That one over there, the waitress from Café Morrison. I've seen her serving coffee to businessmen who don't even look at her face. She's a nobody." "Perfect." What Damien didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that Ilara Chen had been waiting for this moment for 3 years. She had accepted the job at Morrison's precisely because it was across from the Apex Club. She watched him through the window every day, memorizing his patterns, his habits, his cruelties. Marcus chuckled, a sound like breaking glass. "I need to see this. I bet $1 million you can't last 6 months without running back to your penthouse." "Let it be 2 million, Damien replied, his golden eyes gleaming with predatory confidence. "She'll sign the papers by Friday." 3 days later, Damien entered Café Morrison like a king entering a peasant's hut. Lunch service was in full swing, and Ilara moved between the tables with practical efficiency, her dark hair tied in a simple ponytail, her uniform clean but showing some signs of wear. She looked up as he approached, and for a moment something gleamed in those grey eyes, something ancient and wise that made her inner lion stir restlessly. Then it disappeared, replaced by polite attention. "Can I help?" Her voice was softer than he expected, with an underlying tone he couldn't quite place. Damien smiled, his expression calculated to both charm and disarm. "My name is Damien Sterling. I'd like to make you an offer." Around them, the cafe seemed to hold its breath. Everyone in New Seattle knew who Damien Sterling was. The lion-like shapeshifter who had destroyed 3 rival companies in just the last year. The CEO whose word could make or break careers with a single phone call. Ilara carefully set down the coffee maker. I'm listening. Marry me. 6 months. I'll pay you $50,000, more money than you'd earn in 5 years serving coffee. All you have to do is assume the role of my wife, attend events by my side, and stay out of my way. When the 6 months are up, we'll divorce discreetly, and you'll walk away safe and sound for the rest of your life. He expected shock, confusion, perhaps even outrage. Instead, Ilara tilted her head slightly, studying him with those unsettling grey eyes. Why? Does it matter? To try. Damien's smile widened. He liked challenges, even small ones. Let's just say I have something to prove about the natural order of things. Something dark flashed across Ilara's face, too quickly to decipher. Then she nodded once, determined. I accept, but I have one condition. This surprised him. Humans didn't make demands of their superiors. Which one? When the 6 months are over, tell me the truth about what happened to Chen Industries 5 years ago. Damien's heart should have stopped when he heard that name. He should have recognized the connection immediately, but he had destroyed so many human enterprises, shattered so many families, that the name meant nothing to him. It was just another step on his path to power, forgotten as soon as it was crushed beneath his heel. Okay, he readily agreed. Whatever you want. Ilara smiled then, a small, mysterious smile on her lips that didn't reach her eyes. So, we have a deal, Mr. Sterling. They shook hands, and Damien felt a strange shiver run through his body at her touch, but he ignored the sensation, attributing it to the excitement for the upcoming game. He had no idea that he had just made a pact with his own destruction. The wedding that shocked New Seattle. The announcement was a bombshell in the media. Lion CEO Damien Sterling is getting married to a waitress. The animal elite reacted with indignation and fascination. Interspecies relationships weren't illegal, but they were considered in bad taste, especially when they involved someone of Damien's status marrying someone of such inferior position. The gossip columns teemed with speculation. Was it a marketing ploy? Had the mighty lion finally gone mad? Damien's father, Richard Sterling, a former CEO and old-school tycoon, called him immediately. "What the hell are you doing?" The oldest lion's voice crackled with fury on the phone. "Marrying a human. Have you forgotten who you are, what we built together?" "It's only 6 months, Dad." Damien was in his penthouse office, overlooking the glittering cityscape of New Seattle. "It's just a game. Nothing more. It's all about the legacy of our species, Damien. If you marry a human, even temporarily, you'll be spitting on generations of Sterling pride." "Then consider this a lesson in dominance," Damien replied coldly. "I'm going to show everyone exactly where humans fit in the hierarchy, below us, playing the roles we've assigned them." His father hung up the phone without saying anything else. The wedding was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Damien's legal team drafted a strict prenuptial agreement that granted Ilara nothing more than the agreed-upon $50,000. She signed it without reading it, which he found both funny and pathetic. But what Damien didn't know was that Ilara had her own lawyers reviewing everything. And more importantly, she had her own plan unfolding like origami, each fold revealing a new layer of the trap she had spent 3 years building. The ceremony took place in the ballroom of the Sterling estate, an imposing cathedral-like space made of marble and gold, exuding ancient wealth and power. 200 guests attended, the entire animal elite, all watching with barely disguised judgment. Ilara arrived wearing a simple white dress that cost less than the flower arrangements, and somehow this made her stand out even more amidst the ostentatious elite with their designer clothes. Her dark hair was loose over her shoulders, and she wore no jewelry except for a thin silver bracelet that covered her left wrist. Damien barely glanced at her during the ceremony. It was all theatre, nothing more. He recited his vows with perfect insincerity, placed the ring on her finger with rehearsed indifference, and prepared to seal the ridiculous agreement with a perfunctory kiss. Then the officiant said, "Now you may kiss the bride." And Ilara raised her hands to caress his face. The bracelet slipped, just for a moment, enough time for Damien to see the mark on the inside of her wrist, the lotus flower, a pale and perfect pink, burned with an otherworldly light that only shapeshifters could perceive, the mark of the first. It was at that moment that the champagne glass fell from his inert fingers, and the world Damien knew began to crumble. The truth he couldn't face. "Damien!" Ilara's voice broke his shock, soft but insistent. "Are you going to kiss me, or are we going to stay here all night?" The ballroom, filled with elite shapeshifters, began to murmur. Damien's reputation, built on confidence and unwavering dominance, was at stake. He forced himself to move, to lean in and press his lips briefly against hers, but his mind screamed. It couldn't be real. The Mark of the Firsts was a myth, a fairy tale told to lion cubs to teach them honor and duty. The story went that when New Seattle was founded 3 centuries ago, a group of human families, the Firsts, helped the shape-shifting founders survive a plague that threatened to wipe them out. In gratitude, the founders swore a blood oath to protect these families forever, marking them with the symbol of the lotus flower that would identify them for generations. But the families disappeared decades ago. The lineages became extinct. The traces faded from history and became legends. But they weren't finished. One of them was standing in front of him, dressed as a bride and wearing her ring. One of them was the woman he impulsively married. Damien broke the kiss, his golden eyes fixed on Ilara's face, searching for any sign that she knew the meaning of the mark. But her expression was serene, indecipherable, as if she hadn't just revealed herself to be untouchable by all the laws her ancestors considered sacred. "Ladies and gentlemen," the officiant announced, "allow me to introduce you to Mr. and Mrs. Damien Sterling." Polite applause echoed through the hall, though Damien could hear the latent indignation and disbelief among his fellow shapeshifters. They saw this as a degradation of their status. If only they knew the truth, that he had just committed the most egregious blasphemy possible in their culture. The reception passed in the blink of an eye. Damien mechanically followed the steps, the first dance, the speeches, the cake cutting, while his mind raced. He needed to talk to Ilara alone. He needed to understand. Finally, as midnight approached and the last guests dispersed in groups of gossips, Damien cornered his new wife in the estate's library. She stood by the window, still in her wedding dress, gazing at the impeccably manicured gardens below. "Show me your pulse," he demanded bluntly. Ilara turned slowly, her grey eyes meeting his without fear. "Why? Did you see something that bothered you? Don't mess with me." His voice came out as a low growl, his inner lion fighting to take control. "That mark, it's none of your business." She tightened her grip on the bracelet, covering the lotus flower. "You married me for 6 months, Mr. Sterling, not for my secrets, if that's really what I think it is." "And then what?" Ilara took a step toward him, and something in her energy made him instinctively recoil. "You're suddenly going to develop a conscience. The great Damien Sterling, who crushes humans under his designer shoes, is suddenly going to care about an ancient oath." His words sounded like physical blows. "You knew. You knew what you were doing when you accepted my marriage proposal." "I knew exactly what I was doing." Ilara's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Just like you knew exactly what you were doing when you destroyed Chen Industries 5 years ago." The name finally made sense. Chen Industries, the mid-sized technology company that he had systematically dismantled to acquire the desired patent. He used every dirty trick at his disposal, leaking false information to devalue the stock, bribing employees to involve them in excessive bureaucracy, and luring their best talent with irresistible offers. Within 6 months, Chen Industries declared bankruptcy. The CEO, or what was his name again, James Chen, had— "You're his daughter," Damien whispered. And finally, everything made sense. "I'm surprised you remember him," Ilara said, her voice as cold as winter rain. "After all, he was just another human being in your path, wasn't he? Just another life you could destroy without consequences." Damien clenched his fists at his sides. "Business is business. Your father made some bad decisions. My father was a good man who built his company from scratch." For the first time, genuine emotion shone through Ilara's calm facade. He employed 300 people. He supported families. He donated to schools and hospitals. And you destroyed him because you wanted a patent. Their technology you could have licensed, but you were too arrogant to share with a human being. If he couldn't protect his company, he killed himself. The words fell like bombs in the space between them. 3 months after the collapse of Chen Industries. He couldn't bear the shame. He couldn't live with the idea that 300 families had lost their livelihoods because of his failure. He left a note apologizing to everyone he had disappointed. And you know what else? His name was on that note. He blamed himself, but he knew who had truly destroyed him. The library fell silent, except for the ticking of an old clock. Damien's world crumbled. He had a vague notion that the CEO had died. He saw the news in the business section, Chen Industries founder passes away, but he never connected it with his own actions. He never bothered to do so. "Sorry," said the other voice, sounding strange and inappropriate. Elara gave a bitter laugh. "Are you apologizing? Are you apologizing?" She rolled up her sleeve, revealing the lotus mark in all its pale pink glory. "Do you even understand what this means? Your ancestors swore a blood oath to protect my family. They promised that no harm would befall those who bore this mark. And you murdered my father, as if you had pulled the trigger." Damien stared at the mark, and something primal stirred within his chest. His lion, normally a source of pride and power, now cowered inside him, because every shapeshifter knew deep in their DNA that the mark of the first was sacred. To harm someone who bore it was to violate the very foundations of their society. "Why?" he managed to ask. "Why marry me? Why not expose the brand publicly and ruin myself?" "Because I wanted you to know exactly what you did before I destroyed you." Elara lowered her sleeve, covering the mark once more. "I wanted you to see me every day and remember that you are capable of change, but you chose arrogance. I wanted you to feel what it's like to be powerless in someone else's game. All of this was planned, from the beginning. From the moment I watched your press conference about acquiring Chen's patent, from the moment I saw you smile as you announced a deal that cost my father his life." His grey eyes were hard as steel. "I spent 3 years preparing for this, learning everything about you, positioning myself where you could see me, and when I learned of your cruel bet with your friends, I knew you were arrogant enough to choose me." A shiver ran down Damien's spine. "What do you want?" "I want you to suffer as my father suffered. I want your empire to crumble around you. I want every shapeshifter in this city to know what you've done." Elara walked toward the library door and stopped. "But above all, I want you to understand that humans are not inferior to you, Mr. Sterling. Some of us are the very foundation upon which your world was built." She left him there, alone with his thoughts and the weight of his sins. The worst part was that Damien couldn't even get angry, because she was right about everything. And the 6 months of his marriage, the 6 months he thought would be a fun adventure, ended up becoming a prison sentence of his own making. The morning after the wedding, Damien was in his penthouse bedroom, separate from the one that had been given to Elara, and called an emergency meeting with his legal team. "I need everything you can find about Chen Industries, everything about James Chen and his family, and I need to know if that Lotus brand is legally recognized." His lead lawyer, a shape-shifting eagle with a piercing gaze named Patricia, looked up from her notes. "The mark of the first, that's... Damien, that's the fundamental law. If she truly possesses that mark and you harmed her family, the Founders' Council can take everything from you." His heart sank, even if the bloodlines were supposedly extinct. "The oath doesn't expire just because we think the families have become extinct. In fact, harming one of the last bearers would be considered even worse." Patricia's expression was serious. "You need to be very careful. If this leaks, it won't work." Damien's voice was firm. "We have 6 months. I'll figure something out." But even as he said that, he knew he was lying. How do you solve a murder? How do you bring a father back to life? Meanwhile, Elara woke up in the guest suite of the Sterling mansion and began her own campaign. She had spent 3 years planning this revenge and wouldn't let Damien's belated guilt get in her way. The first attack occurred that afternoon. Damien received an email from the New Seattle Chronicle, the city's most prestigious newspaper. They wanted to write a story about his unusual marriage and requested an interview with him and Elara. He found her in the garden of the property, where she was reading a book under an oak tree. With an expression of complete peace, "You gave an interview without telling me," he said bluntly. Elara looked up, her expression innocent. "They asked, I answered. Isn't that what wives do? What did you say to them? The truth. That you won me over. That you saw me serving coffee and decided I was the right person. That you're a romantic beneath all that corporate armor. His smile was a poisonous honey. I made you seem utterly noble. Damien gritted his teeth. She was controlling the narrative, portraying him as a lovesick fool or a man on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Either way, his reputation as a ruthless lion was being damaged. That's not part of our agreement. Our agreement was that I would play your wife, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Ilara stood up, closing the book. Unless you want to explain to the reporter why you actually married me, I'm sure the story about a cruel bet would be fascinating for readers. She had him cornered, and they both knew it. In the following weeks, a pattern began to emerge. Damien tried to exert control, choosing the events they attended, what Ilara wore, who she talked to, and Ilara obeyed with impeccable sweetness, while simultaneously undermining him in ways he couldn't prove, but certainly felt. At a fundraising event, she gave a speech about the importance of supporting struggling, human-centered businesses, her grey eyes meeting his across the room as she talked about how good companies can be easily destroyed by predatory practices. At a business dinner, she charmed her rivals with her intelligence and genuine warmth, making him seem cold and arrogant in comparison. At his father's birthday party, she listened with apparent sympathy to Richard Sterling's stories about the good old days when humans knew their place, and then asked discreet questions that made the older lion look like a prejudiced idiot. And all this time, she kept the lotus mark hidden beneath bracelets and long sleeves, a secret that hung over Damien's head like a sword. He began to understand that this was her revenge, not an isolated dramatic confrontation, but a slow dismantling of everything upon which he had built his identity. His friends noticed the change in him. "You look awful," Marcus said one night at the Apex Club, a month after the wedding. "Is it so hard to deal with people like that?" Damien wanted to laugh, dealing with her. He couldn't take it anymore. His sleep was tormented by nightmares of James Chen's face, a face he had never seen, but which his mind had constructed nonetheless, accusing him from beyond the grave. "She is not what I expected," he admitted. "Then divorce her once and for all. Pay the penalty for the bet. It's just money." But it wasn't just about money. It was the mark. It was the oath his ancestors had sworn. It was the growing, terrifying realization that Ilara was right. He had committed sacrilege, and there was no easy way out. Damien began to observe his wife more closely. He noticed how she moved through the world with a quiet dignity, never demanding attention, but somehow earning it. He saw how the estate staff, all shapeshifters who initially mocked the human bride, slowly began to respect her. She was kind to them. She learned their names, asked about their families, thanked them for their work. Simple things Damien would never have thought to do. After all, why would a lion thank servants for doing his job? He also realized that she never asked him for anything. Not money, not gifts, not even the most basic kindness. She existed in his space like a ghost, present but untouchable, watching him with those shrewd grey eyes that saw everything he tried to hide. 2 months after the wedding, Damien made a decision that surprised even himself. He began to investigate Chen Industries thoroughly. What he discovered destroyed the last vestiges of his arrogance, but the worst was yet to come. James Chen was 48 years old when he passed away. He had founded Chen Industries in his garage 25 years earlier, building printed circuit boards by hand and selling them at technology fairs. The company grew slowly and organically, driven by innovation and integrity, rather than aggressive expansion. At 2 a.m., Damien sat in his office, surrounded by files compiled by his investigators, reading about a man he never bothered to understand. Chen was very well liked by his employees. He refused to lay anyone off during the recession, accepting a pay cut to keep everyone working. He created a scholarship fund for employees, children. He made anonymous donations to hospitals and schools in New Seattle. He was, in every respect, a good man. And Damien destroyed it without a second thought. The patent that Damien so desired, a breakthrough in neural interface technology, was Chen's life's work. He had spent 15 years developing it, dreaming about how it could help people with disabilities communicate and interact with the world. Damien took the material and transformed it into a military application, selling it to defense companies for weapons systems. The irony was bitter as poison. Damien had probably profited less from the patent than Chen would from its humanitarian uses. But Damien wanted it because no other lion could have it, because destroying a human company had been easy, and he had never encountered a challenge he wouldn't accept. "Hey, what are you doing?" Damien looked up and saw Elara standing in the doorway of his office, wrapped in a silk robe. It was 3 in the morning. She should be asleep. "Reading about your father," he said calmly. Something glinted in his eyes. Pain, perhaps, or surprise that he cared enough to look. "Why?" "Because I should have read about him 5 years ago, before he destroyed everything he built." Elara entered the office, her bare feet silent on the carpet. "Did you find what you were looking for?" "I discovered I'm a monster." "I could have told you that," but her voice lost its usual tone. She sat down in the chair across from his desk, hugging her knees. "When I was little, he used to take me to his office on weekends. I'd sit at his desk and pretend to have important meetings with my stuffed animals. He always took my deals seriously, discussed the terms, negotiated. He taught me that business should be about building things, not destroying them." Damien's throat tightened. "So, no." She raised her hand. "Don't apologize again. Apologies are just words, and words are worthless. So, what do you want from me?" "I want you to understand what you took from the world when you killed him." Her grey eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw the depth of her pain. "I want you to carry this burden for the rest of your life." They remained silent for a long moment, with the city lights shining through the windows behind Damien. "The mark," he said finally. "Did your father know? Did he know what it was when I went looking for him?" Elara's expression turned bitter. "He knew. We always knew. The knowledge was passed down through generations. Even when we thought we were the last remaining family. My grandmother used to tell me stories about the oath, about how the shape-shifting founders promised that we would always be protected. So why didn't he reveal this? Why didn't he use this to stop me?" "Because he believed in dignity." His voice wavered slightly. "He believed that if he revealed the mark, people would say he was hiding behind ancestral protections instead of succeeding through his own merit. He wanted Chen Industries to prosper because it was a good company, not because he was untouchable." Damien felt as if he had been punched in the chest. James Chen had been a better man than Damien could ever have hoped to be, and that nobility had led him to his death. "I'll take care of it," Damien said, surprising himself. Elara laughed, the sound hollow. "You can't fix death." "No. But I can fix what happened afterward." He stood up, suddenly energized and with a defined purpose for the first time in months. "Chen Industries went bankrupt, but it wasn't the only human enterprise I destroyed. There are others, families still struggling with debt and shame. I can help them." "With money?" Elara asked disdainfully. "Do you think you can solve the problem simply with money?" "No. With opportunities, with support, with the same resources I used to destroy them." Damien walked around the table and knelt in front of her chair, looking her in the eyes. "You're right. Excuses are easy, so let me show you what." Elara studied his face for a long moment, searching for any lie. "Why? Because you're afraid of what will happen when the council finds out about the mark?" "No. Because I'm afraid of what I've become." The confession cost him dearly. But it was true. "I look at what I did to your father, and I see a stranger. Someone I don't recognize. Someone my own ancestors would be ashamed of." "Good," Elara said softly. "That's the first step." The Redemption Project word spread quickly through the new Seattle business community. Damien Sterling was launching a new initiative. He called the project the Phoenix Fund, a multi-billion-dollar investment program created specifically to help human-owned businesses that have been harmed by opportunistic and unscrupulous companies. The announcement shocked everyone. Damien's friends thought he had gone mad. His father called him a traitor to his kind. The animal elite whispered that his human wife had corrupted him. But Damien didn't care anymore. He spent his days meeting with families he had harmed, looking them in the eye and offering genuine help. Not charity, but investment and partnership. He used his connections to open doors that were closed. He leveraged his reputation, what was left of it, to demand fair treatment for human entrepreneurs. It was exhausting. It was an experience that taught us humility, and it was the first concrete thing Damien had done in years. Ilara watched from afar, her expression unreadable. She accompanied him to events when necessary, playing the role of an understanding wife, but she didn't comment on his efforts. She simply observed, her grey eyes absorbing everything. 3 months after the wedding, in the midst of the divorce, something changed. Damien arrived home late at night and found Ilara in the estate's kitchen, preparing tea. She had claimed the space as her own, since the staff had discovered that she preferred to do small things herself, rather than be served. "He has a family," Damien said without shaking his hand. "The Johnsons, I destroyed their restaurant supply business 6 years ago. His father had a heart attack from the stress. He didn't die, but now he's incapacitated. He can't work." Ilara poured 2 cups of tea and pushed one toward him. "Are you going to help them?" "I tried. I offered money. I offered to start a new business for their son. They refused." He accepted the tea gratefully, holding the warm cup in his hands. "The mother said that no amount of money would bring back the lost years. She's right." "I know, but I don't know what else to do." Damien looked at his wife, really looked at her, seeing the woman behind the vengeful angel. "How do you fix something when apologizing isn't enough and you don't want to act?" Ilara was silent for a moment, steam rising from her cup. "You don't fix it. You live with it. You carry the weight and don't let go, even when it's heavy. Especially when it's heavy. Is that what you do with your father? Every day?" Her voice was almost a whisper. "Every day I wake up and choose to carry this pain instead of being destroyed by it." Damien put down the cup and did something he had never done before. He told her the whole truth. "I thought I was a king," he said. "I thought being powerful meant crushing anyone who opposed me. I thought humans were inferior to us, less important, less real." He stared at her. "You showed me how wrong I was, how monstrous. And I don't know if I'll ever be the kind of man who deserves forgiveness, but I'll try anyway." Ilara's expression softened slightly. "Why?" "Because you were right. Power isn't about domination, it's about responsibility. And I've been abdicating that responsibility my entire life." They were sitting in the kitchen, drinking tea in comfortable silence, and for the first time since their wedding, the air between them wasn't heavy with hostility. But Ilara held another secret, a final truth that Damien was unaware of, and when she revealed it, everything would change again. The 5-month deadline was approaching. There was only 1 month left until the agreement and the divorce were finalized. Damien expected to feel relief, but instead he felt something closer to dread. He had grown accustomed to Ilara's presence in his life, her quiet strength, her sharp intelligence, the way she challenged him to be better without ever explicitly demanding it. He fell in love with her, he realized one morning while watching her read in the garden. He fell in love with the woman he married, by sheer irony. The cosmic irony did not escape his notice, but Ilara had made it clear that forgiveness, if it ever came, would be earned over years, not months. And she had never given any indication that she felt anything for him beyond a cold sense of justice. So Damien threw himself headlong into his redemption project with renewed vigor. The Phoenix Fund was now making a difference. Businesses were reopening, families were recovering. It wasn't enough to atone for his sins, but it was something. So, 2 weeks before their 6-month anniversary, Ilara asked him to meet her at the library. She stood near the window where she had revealed her father's death, her silhouette illuminated by the setting sun. When she turned to face him, Damien saw something in her expression that chilled his blood. "There's one more thing you need to know," she said, her voice firm despite the pain in her eyes. "Something I couldn't tell you until you had truly changed. Until I knew the truth mattered to you." Damien's heart raced. "What is it?" 5 years ago, when Chen Industries was going bankrupt, I was engaged. His name was Michael. We'd been together since college. We were planning our wedding." She took a deep breath, her voice trembling. "I was pregnant too." The world seemed to be tilting. The stress of seeing my father's company fail, of watching him descend into depression, of dealing with debt collectors and bankruptcy lawyers, it was too much. I was 3 months pregnant when I suffered a miscarriage. A single tear rolled down Ilara's cheek. Dad, I lost our baby because of what you did to my family. Damien couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. The weight of this new sin hit him like a tsunami. After that, Michael left me. He blamed me for not being stronger, for not protecting our son from stress, as if I were capable of that. Her voice broke. So you didn't take my father away from me, Damien. You took away my future, my family, everything I should have had. He crossed the room without thinking, extending his hand to her, but she took a step back. No, I'm not telling you this to comfort you. I'm telling you this because you need to know the price your cruelty has cost you. She angrily wiped away a tear. I'm telling you this so you understand that some damage is irreparable. Damien fell to his knees. He literally collapsed. His legs could no longer support him, and made him stand up under the crushing weight of what he had done. I killed your son, he whispered, the words torn from somewhere deep within his soul. I killed your father and your son. Yes, Ilara's voice was cold as iron. You did. The library fell silent, save for the sound of Damien's heavy breathing. His lion, that proud creature that had always made him feel invincible, now cowered in the depths of his conscience, lamenting the magnitude of his sins. Why tell me now? He finally managed to ask. Why not in the beginning? Because at first you wouldn't have cared. Ilara walked to the library door, stopping with her hand on the doorknob. You would have found a way to rationalize it, to blame my father for being weak, to blame me for not being strong enough. But now I think you can truly understand what you destroyed. She left him there, kneeling on the Persian rug, drowning in a guilt that no amount of money or good deeds could erase. Damien didn't sleep for 3 days. He couldn't eat. He couldn't work. He couldn't do anything but mentally repeat Ilara's words in an endless, torturous cycle. I lost our baby because of what you did to my family. His team noticed. Patricia, his lawyer, found him in his office in the early hours of the 3rd day, staring intently at his computer screen. Damien, you look terrible. What happened? I need you to draft a document, he said, his voice hoarse from disuse. I'm transferring control of Sterling Industries to a trust. The Phoenix Trust will be its primary purpose. Every penny raised will be used to repair the damage I caused. Patricia's eyes widened. That's all your legacy. Your father's legacy. My father's legacy is shame. Mine is worse. Damien finally looked at her, and she recoiled at his gaze. Do it. Today. Damien. Today, Patricia. Or else I'll find a lawyer who will do it. She left, shaken, and Damien returned to his computer. But he wasn't looking at business documents. He was researching fertility clinics, adoption agencies, support groups for pregnancy loss. He was looking for ways to repay what could never be returned. When Ilara found him that night, apparently she learned of his breakdown through concerned staff. He was surrounded by printouts and research papers. What are you doing? She asked, in a carefully neutral tone. Trying to solve the unsolvable. Damien pointed to the papers. There are hundreds of women who have lost their pregnancies due to corporate stress, due to economic disasters caused by predatory business practices. I can't bring their children back, but I can help others. Fund research, support programs, ensure that no other woman has to choose between financial survival and a healthy pregnancy. Ilara stared at him for a long moment. Diaz, you're serious? I'm tired of being anything else. He stood up, staggering slightly from exhaustion. I've spent my entire adult life being a monster, Ilara. I can't undo what I've done, but I can stop doing it. I can become someone different. Why? The question was asked softly, almost as a display of vulnerability. Why does this matter to you right now? Because I love you. The words fell into the space between them, like stones in calm waters. Ilara's eyes widened, shock shattering her carefully maintained composure. What? I'm in love with you, Damien repeated, and the confession made him feel naked and exposed. I know I have no right to feel this way. I know you hate me, and you should. But watching you these past few months, seeing your strength, your grace, and your refusal to let everything I've done bring you down, I've fallen in love with who you are. You're in love with your own guilt, Ilara said, but her voice trembled. Maybe, probably. I don't know anymore. Damien ran a hand through his hair, which was disheveled from days without sleep. All I know is that you changed me. The Phoenix Fund, the policy changes, all of that. I'm doing this because you showed me who I was, and I couldn't stand being that person anymore. Ilara hugged her protectively. Love can't fix what you've done. I know nothing solves this, but maybe this is the beginning of me becoming someone who wouldn't do this again. They stood there, two broken people in a room filled with desperate research, and something shifted in the air between them. I need time, Ilara finally said. The 6 months are almost over. I need to get away from you. To think. Take all the time you need. Damien's voice was hoarse. I'll be here trying to get better, for as long as it takes. A week before the divorce was finalized, Damien received an urgent phone call from Patricia. You need to come to the office. Now, the Founders' Council wants to meet with you. His blood ran cold. The council, composed of the oldest and most powerful shapeshifters from the founding families, rarely intervened in modern affairs. If they were summoning him, it meant someone had told them about the mark. He donned his most formal suit and headed to City Hall, a building older than New Seattle itself. Constructed of stone and tradition, 5 ancient shapeshifters sat in a position of judgment. 2 lions, a wolf, an eagle, and a bear. Their combined age probably approached a millennium, and their eyes carried the weight of centuries. Damien Sterling, the eldest lioness, a female named Cassandra, with a white mane and eyes like molten gold, spoke with ancient authority. You have been accused of violating the oath of the first. I know, he said simply. There was no reason to deny it. The council was shocked. They had expected a defense, a denial, and legal maneuvering. Do you admit to hurting someone who bears the mark? Cassandra leaned forward. Do you understand the gravity of this crime? Yes. James Chen bore the mark, though I didn't know it at the time. I destroyed his company through predatory business practices. He committed suicide as a consequence. His daughter, my wife, also bears the mark. Damien faced each member of the council. I have no defense. I violated my oath. I deserve whatever punishment you decree. The council members exchanged glances, speaking in a language too ancient for Damien to understand. Finally, Cassandra spoke again. The traditional punishment for breaking an oath is exile and the severing of all family ties. You would lose your name, your company, your place in society. I understand. However, the ancient lioness rose, moving with surprising grace despite her age. We have watched you, Damien Sterling. We have seen the Phoenix Fund. We have seen your efforts at redemption. We have seen a lion who looked into the darkness of his own soul and chose to change. Damien's heart began to pound with what could be hope. The oath of the first ones wasn't created for vengeance, Cassandra continued. It was created to ensure that those who helped us in our darkest moments would always be protected, but protection can take many forms. She gestured, and another door opened. Ilara entered, and Damien held his breath. Ilara Chen, Cassandra said formally. You bear the mark. You have the right to demand full punishment for the crimes committed against your family. Ilara's grey eyes met Damien's across the room. He saw the war unfolding in her expression, the desire for justice, the pain of her losses, and something more, something that felt almost like understanding. What would a full punishment entail, she asked. Exile, the dissolution of Sterling Industries, the erasure of the Sterling name from the founding families. His father would be shamed, his legacy destroyed. Ilara was silent for a long moment. Then, what if I choose mercy? The council was taken aback by the surprise. Then we will follow your guidance, said Cassandra. You are the injured party. The oath exists to serve you. I want him to continue with the Phoenix Fund, Ilara said, her voice firmer. I want him to spend the rest of his life repairing the damage he caused, not just to my family, but to all human families destroyed by the arrogance of the shapeshifters. I want him to be a living example that people can change. She turned to face Damien directly. And I want the truth about the mark to be revealed. I want all the shapeshifters in this city to know that humans are not inferior to them, that some of us are the very foundation of their world. Cassandra smiled, her expression fierce and brimming with pride. "And you honor your lineage, child. Very well. Damien Sterling, you are sentenced to a lifetime of service. The Phoenix Fund will operate under the supervision of the Council. You will dedicate its resources and power to fulfilling the oath your ancestors swore." "I accept," Damien said immediately. "And one more thing," Cassandra added, her tired eyes glistening. "We have records, you know, from all the first families. Your wife's lineage goes back to the beginning, to Lin Chen, who discovered the herb that cured the plague. Her sacrifice saved thousands of shapeshifters, including my own grandmother." She approached and stopped in front of Ilara, placing her hand on the young woman's shoulder. "You carry the blood of heroes, child, never forget that." Tears streamed down Ilara's face. "My father never knew. He knew about the mark, but no, he didn't know how important we were." "He knew," Cassandra said softly, "in his bones, in his blood. That's why he chose dignity over protection. That's why he built something good instead of relying on ancient oaths." She looked at Damien. "And that's why his destruction was such a profound violation." The council dismissed them, and Damien and Ilara left the room together, walking towards the afternoon sunlight. "Thank you," Damien said softly. "Tao for choosing mercy." "I didn't choose this for you," Ilara replied. "I chose it because destroying you would make me like you, and I'm not going to let you take that away from me." But there was something different in his voice now, something softer. 6 months later, new beginnings. The divorce papers were never signed. Instead, they agreed to separate. Ilara moved into her own apartment, a property owned by Damien's company, but one she refused to let him pay for, insisting on rent at fair market value. She needed space. She needed time to heal without his constant presence. Damien respected that. He dedicated himself to the Phoenix Fund with unwavering determination. Each day brought new encounters with the families he had hurt, new opportunities to repair the damage. He also started therapy, not because someone forced him, but because he recognized that his arrogance and cruelty had deep roots, and that he needed to dig them up if he truly wanted to change. Meanwhile, Ilara enrolled in business school. She had spent 3 years plotting revenge. Now she wanted to learn how to build something of her own, something her father would be proud of. They saw each other occasionally, at Phoenix Fund events, at board meetings, where Ilara now served as an advisor, ensuring that human voices were heard in the transforming governance. With each encounter, the atmosphere between them became a little less hostile, a little more comfortable. Damien watched her from across the room, seeing her confidence grow, seeing her embrace a legacy she had never fully understood. She was magnificent, and he knew he didn't deserve her, but he was learning that what mattered was not deserving, but being better. A year after the wedding, Ilara called him. "Can we meet at Café Morrison?" Her heart raced, the place where it all began. Of course. She was waiting at a corner table when he arrived, having already ordered 2 coffees. Damien sat down across from her, studying her face. She seemed at peace, more at peace than he had ever seen her. "I've been thinking," she said bluntly, "about forgiveness, about what it means and whether it's even possible." Damien waited, afraid to breathe. "I'll never forget what you did. The pain doesn't go away." Ilara gripped her coffee cup tightly. "But I've been watching you this year, really watching, and I see someone who is genuinely trying to get better." "Yes," he said calmly, "every day. I know. And I think—" She took a deep breath. "I think my father would have forgiven you. Eventually, he believed in second chances, in the possibility of redemption. I'm starting to believe it." Her grey eyes met his, and for the first time he saw warmth instead of ice. "I'm starting to believe that people can change if they really want to." Damien felt something open in his chest, hope, fragile and terrifying. "I'm not ready for anything romantic," Ilara continued. "Maybe I never will be. But I think we could try being friends. Real friends, not just people trapped by guilt and revenge." "I would love to," said Damien, his voice choked with emotion. More than anything, they talked for hours that day, about her classes, about his work, about the changes happening in New Seattle as the truth about the first ones spread through the community. Some shapeshifters resisted, clinging to old prejudices. But others, especially the younger generation, embraced the idea, seeing an opportunity to build something better. In the following months, a friendship blossomed between them, a true and genuine friendship, built on honesty and a shared purpose. Damien helped Ilara with her business school projects, offering ideas tempered by hard-won wisdom. Ilara challenged him to think beyond traditional power structures, to imagine a new Seattle, where species did not define value. And slowly, so slowly that Damien barely noticed, forgiveness emerged. Not a complete pardon. He didn't think Ilara would fully absolve him, nor did he expect her to, but a pardon that would allow them both to move on, a pardon that acknowledged the past without being stuck in it. 2 years after their wedding, Ilara unexpectedly showed up at Damien's penthouse. He opened the door and found her standing there, with a vulnerable expression he had never seen before. "I'm scared," she said, without greeting him. "Of what?" "That's it. Letting you in. The fact that I'm falling in love with who you've become." Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm afraid I'm betraying my father by caring about you." Damien pulled her inside, leading her to the sofa. "You're not betraying him. You're honoring his belief in redemption." "How do you know?" "Because you told me he believed in second chances, because everything you told me about him suggests he was a man who built bridges instead of walls." Damien gently took her hands. "I can't speak for him, Ilara, but I think he would be proud of the woman you've become, proud of your strength and your capacity to forgive." Ilara leaned against him, and Damien held her carefully, as if she might faint at any moment. "I want to try," she whispered. "I want to try being with you, really with you." "Is he sure?" "No, but I'm tired of letting fear control my choices." She took a step back to face him. "You've changed, Damien. I've seen you become a good person. Someone worthy of the oath your ancestors swore. I don't know if I'll ever be worthy of you. Then we'll find out together." That night, they started over from scratch, not as enemies or strangers playing roles, but as two people genuinely trying to build something real. It wasn't easy. Ilara sometimes had nightmares, waking up crying because of dreams about her father. Damien had moments of overwhelming guilt that made him question whether he deserved that happiness. But they overcame it together, with therapy, honest conversations, and the kind of patience that only comes when we truly understand each other's pain. 3 years later, the cycle is complete. The ceremony took place in the same ballroom where they got married, but everything else was different. This time, the guest list included humans and shapeshifters in equal measure. This time, Ilara wore a dress she had chosen herself, elegant and expensive, yes, but above all, hers. This time, the lotus mark on her wrist was visible to all, no longer hidden, but celebrated. And this time, when Damien made his vows, he meant it. "I stand before you as a man who was lost and has been found," he said, his golden eyes fixed on Ilara's face. "I received power and used it to harm. I received privileges and used them to oppress. I thought I was a king, but I was merely a tyrant." The crowd fell silent, mesmerized. "Ilara Chen showed me the truth about myself. She showed me that true strength doesn't lie in domination, but in service. That true power doesn't lie in crushing others, but in lifting them up." Her voice was choked with emotion. "And she showed me that people can change if they are willing to honestly look at who they were and commit to being better." He held her hands in his, feeling the familiar mark beneath his fingers. "You are the heir to the heroes, Ilara, and you made me want to be heroic too, not through grand gestures, but through daily choices to be kinder, fairer, more human." Tears streamed down Ilara's face as she recited her vows. "I came into your life planning your destruction," she said. "I wanted you to suffer like my father suffered. I wanted to destroy you the same way you destroyed my family." She smiled through her tears. "But at some point, I learned that destroying people doesn't heal anything. Building does, forgiveness does, love does." She reached out to caress his face. "You've spent 3 years proving that people can change. You transformed your empire into a machine for good. You used your power to protect instead of harm, and you loved me with a patience and humility I never imagined possible from the arrogant lion who asked me to marry him as part of a bet." "I love you," she said simply. not despite who you were, but because of who you chose to become. When they kissed, the crowd erupted in applause, genuine applause this time, celebrating not a spectacle, but a real union born from the ashes of tragedy. The reception was beautiful. Damien's father, who gradually came to understand and support his son's transformation, gave a speech about the importance of honoring ancestral customs while building new ones. Marcus and the other friends who made the original bet publicly apologized for their role in that cruel game, announcing their own initiatives to promote equality between humans and shapeshifters. But the best moment came late at night, when Elara pulled Damien aside to a quiet corner of the garden. "I have something to tell you," she said, her grey eyes gleaming with a mixture of joy and nervousness. Damien's heart raced. "What is it?" "I am pregnant." The world stopped. "You are—" He couldn't finish the sentence, overwhelmed by emotions too complex to name. 10 weeks. I found out yesterday." Elara took his hand and placed it on her still flat belly. "I'm terrified, Damien. After what happened last time, I'm very scared, but I'm also happy. Because this time I'm not facing this alone. This time I have you." Damien fell to his knees in the garden, pressing his forehead against her stomach, tears streaming freely. "I will protect you both," he whispered. "I swear by the oath my ancestors made, by the mark you bear, by everything I have become. I will protect you. I know you do." Elara ran her fingers through his hair. "That's why I'm not afraid anymore." The girl had her mother's grey eyes and her father's golden hair. At 3 years old, Luna Sterling already showed signs of her mixed heritage, human intuition combined with the strength of a shapeshifter. She also bore the lotus mark on the inside of her wrist, proof that the lineage of the first beings continued. Damien watched from the doorway as Elara read to their daughter. The two of them snuggled up in the nursery of their home, not the Sterling mansion, which had been converted into the Phoenix Fund headquarters, but a smaller, cozier house in a neighborhood where humans and shapeshifters lived side by side. And the lion learned, Elara read from an illustrated book, that being king didn't mean ruling over others. It meant serving them wholeheartedly. Luna yawned, her eyes drooping. "Like Daddy." "Just like Daddy," Elara confirmed, smiling. "Did Daddy used to be mean?" Luna asked sleepily. "Dad made mistakes," Elara said cautiously. "But he learned from them and improved. That's what we all have to do, keep learning, keep growing, keep trying to be kinder." Damien entered the room, and Luna immediately reached out her hand to him. He picked her up, inhaling the sweet scent of her hair. "Time for bed, my little lotus," he murmured, carrying her to her crib. "Tell me about great-grandfather Chen," Luna asked, as she did most nights. Then Damien told her about James Chen, about his integrity, his kindness, his belief in building bridges. He told the story with reverence and sadness, making sure Luna understood both her grandfather's goodness and the price of his destruction. It was important, he and Elara agreed, that Luna know the whole truth, that she understand both the capacity for change and the consequences of cruelty. When Luna finally fell asleep, Damien and Elara stood together in the doorway, watching their daughter's chest rise and fall with peaceful breaths. "Have you regretted this yet?" Damien asked softly. "Forgiving me, giving me this?" Elara leaned against him, her hand finding his. "Sometimes I still miss my father so much it hurts physically. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if you had never destroyed Chen Industries. But then I look at Luna and think about the Phoenix Fund and all the families we helped." She turned to him. "No, I don't regret it. We took something destroyed and built something beautiful from the pieces. We did this together," Damien said, kissing her forehead. "I couldn't have done it without you." "I know." His smile was now mocking. "That's why you're lucky I decided it was worth saving you." They went down to the kitchen together, where they had shared so many late-night conversations over the years. Damien made tea while Elara accessed the latest Phoenix Fund reports on her tablet. 3 more companies will reopen this quarter, she noted with satisfaction. "And the board approved our proposal for human representation in governance." "Your proposal?" Damien corrected. "I just endorsed it." "Our proposal," Elara insisted. "We're a team, remember?" Damien smiled, placing the tea beside her. The best team I've ever worked with. As they sat together in the cozy kitchen, reviewing work and planning the next day, Damien marveled at how far they had come, from a cruel bet to a real marriage, from hate to love, from destruction to creation. He could never undo the harm he had caused. James Chen would never return. The years of pain could not be erased, but he could spend each day trying to be worthy of the second chance Elara had given him. He could use his power to build instead of destroy. He could teach his daughter about honor, humility, and the sacred responsibility of privilege. In short, he could be the man his ancestors promised to be when they swore an oath to the first ones. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Outside, the city of New Seattle shone under the stars, a place where humans and shapeshifters slowly learned to see each other as equals, where ancestral oaths were honored not through protection, but through partnership, where the sins of the past were transformed into the hope of the future. In the children's room upstairs, Luna slept peacefully, the lotus mark on her wrist gleaming faintly in the moonlight, a symbol not of division, but of the bridges that can be built when people choose love instead of hate, forgiveness instead of revenge, and growth instead of pride. The story that began with arrogance and cruelty ended with humility and love. And that, Damien thought as he watched his wife working beside him, was the greatest redemption of all. The true measure of a person is not their mistakes, but what they choose to do after making them. Power without compassion is tyranny, but power coupled with humility can change the world. Subscribe and join our Story Lovers family.